This episode is from the Wandering's vault of previous adventures, and I hope you join me. My name is Pedro Bonato, this is Wanderings. Let's go. This episode is about long-term world travel. I am at the edge of the desert, of the Sahara Desert, here in the Siwa Oasis in the northwest part of Egypt. I am enjoying a nice view of the sunset here. And this episode is being recorded after about a 2-week adventure in the Oasis with me and my wife Jana Komarnicka. But I really wanted to do this episode about long-term world travel at the almost anniversary of me going on this journey, and also at this particular location here in Egypt. This place, as you will see, is sort of like in this in-between worlds. It's between, in a way, the birth of civilization with Egypt. The desert that goes all the way to Libya, actually I can almost see Libya 50 kilometers away from where we're standing. And this is like a natural oasis, one of those things that for most of us, we only know or hear about it in like movies and cartoons and stories, but it's actually a place that exists. It has its historical significance, not only for the people that actually live here for the last 6,000 years or so, but it's actually sort of known because of Alexander the Great came to visit the oracle on the Temple of Amun here in the oasis. So I think an oasis has this thing, you are in this desert, this barren land where you have death through all sides, but you know, or at least you have a hope that there is a place where you can have a safe haven on your journey towards safety, towards civilization, toward home, or towards a new place. And I think the oasis has that idea behind it. I wanted to start with an idea that I will borrow from Carl Sagan. He had this idea when he was doing Cosmos, and I think they recorded this in 1980, so about a year after, at least it was released in 1980, so it was recorded by the time that I was being born, and it's the idea of the cosmic calendar. And the way that he did it was he compressed the whole history of the universe in one calendar year. And then he was talking about when were the galaxies created, when was the Earth created, in the context of something we can understand. The idea of deep time, having 13, 14 billion years of cosmic evolution is one thing. But how can you understand this in human terms? And his idea was to put it in a 1-year calendar. And I thought that was very cool. And I want to start this episode borrowing this, let's say, visualization tool and creating something related to deep time. And the idea of long-term world travel today seems like a novel idea, right? You have these, let's say, influencers or digital nomads or fancy homeless people, as I am one of them myself, that travel the world without having a proper home in any specific location. And this is actually as old as humanity. And I wanted to mention this and put it in a sort of like our deep time calendar. Not a cosmic calendar, but a human calendar. What if we could comprise the whole history of humanity in one calendar year? And what do I mean by humanity? The earliest Homo sapiens, which is the species where you're part of, is from about 300,000 years ago, going all the way to Morocco. That's the place where they found the bones of anatomically modern humans, which is basically just like us. The oldest evidence that we have of people like us existing in the world is about 300,000 years. So let's use this meter of 300,000 years and let's put it into a year. That means the whole history of humanity, all fitting into 1 year. How long have we been wanderers? How long have we been nomads? We all know that before civilization, our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. They would go around the world. They would go around sometimes very specific areas, but they would go and come back, depending on the seasons, depending on the opportunities. So we've been wanderers for a long time. But what is long time? Let's say we put the whole history of the world, the whole history of humanity, in this 300,000 years, into one deep time calendar. That means that we've been hunter-gatherers and have not have a fixed home until December 21st. That means for the whole life, the whole year of humanity's existence, we've been nomads. It's a blip in time, us being settled in one location. We settled about, let's say, 9,000 years ago in Turkey and other places around the world. But about around December 21st is when we settled. Civilization started 6,000 years ago, more or less, here in Egypt, Mesopotamia, these lands, that way. And that would make it Christmas Day. So it would be Christmas, the time in the calendar year of humanity, when we actually created the first hints of civilization with Egypt, Mesopotamia, Indus Valley civilization in India, and a bunch of other places in China and other places too. So around Christmas time, that's when civilization started. It takes us to New Year Day to start having something that we can identify as modern. For example, Ferdinand Magellan, the first guy that led an expedition to circumnavigate the planet, he actually did that, if you're considering this time, around 10 a.m. on New Year's Day. That would be, I think it's 1519, the year that he did that first circumnavigation, going around the globe. So technically, as far as we know, he and his crew is one of the first real world travelers, because he actually went around the globe. Then it took around 8 p.m. on New Year's Eve for photography to be invented. About 9 p.m. is when the first flight happened, and around 10 p.m. is when the first commercial intercontinental flight happened. And the internet in this calendar was invented 57 minutes before midnight. And here we are, let's say, New Year's Eve, and that's a new chapter in humanity. And that's sort of like the idea of this deep time calendar. I wanted to give this context to you so that we sort of like frame the history of humanity in these huge terms. We've been home for about a month. As always, travel can be unique to you. It can be unique to your experience, to your interests. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what travel is meant to bring to our lives. It's meant to be an expedition of sorts. One of the inspirations from the point of view of the photography that I create, that I hope will give a more, let's say, artistic or at least conceptual idea of how I see travel. And this is an example of a photograph that I took for my first fine art series called Portraits of Science, Reimagining Heroes in the History of Science, that I did during my master's. And I did the last photograph in this 12 series of photographs. And again, there will be a whole episode talking about that particular series, but I wanted to mention this particular photograph portrayed by Adam Smith. It was this reimagining of scientists, and this particular photograph is a reimagining of Jeremiah Horrocks. And he was an astronomer, a British astronomer. I think he lived between 1618 and 1641, meaning he actually died very young. The cool thing that he did that is quite fascinating is that even though he died when he was 22, he was able to do so much for modern astronomy, for modern science. And what he did was, he used the work of Johannes Kepler to predict the transit of Venus in front of the sun. You see the moon passing in front of the sun, that's like an eclipse. And in this case, it's like Venus trying to eclipse the sun by passing in front of it. It's sort of like what it is. And the fact that he was able to predict and do measurements of that, and then his contribution, along with many others, including works around tides and a bunch of other astronomical things, made us understand a little bit better the size of the solar system, which basically means our place in space and time. And he inspired generations of explorers. I'm not going to even say just scientists, because this was the age of exploration afterwards, that they really were trying to do expeditions based on some of his work about looking at the transit of Venus, which was very important. Different parts of the world, this phenomenon would happen. And that's why I wanted to show you this photograph. And I imagine him as this older guy because of all, let's say, the embedded knowledge that happened throughout his short life, but then the amount of influence and, let's say, the compounding effect in terms of knowledge and how that got represented. This is my photograph that is sort of like about the idea of travel, about the idea of exploration and going to travel with a purpose. And why am I starting with something related to science? It seems like, oh, this doesn't apply to me, this doesn't apply to like a regular person life today. In a regular person's life, I also consider this idea of going on an expedition. That's long-term world travel, because you can decide to be on a more, let's say, immediate and shallow and more ego-based approach to go and try to collect countries and try to put, I went to all these places, look how many places I've been. And if that's your thing, to collecting stamps, that's great, like go do your thing. But I'll tell you about this other way of doing it. Is this idea of traveling a bit slower and going to a place so that the place changes you. And ideally that you change the place in a good way. That's sort of like the approach of long-term travel that I like. And in this particular one, I'm going to talk about two books that really inspire me to go on a travel adventure. And that was, first of all, Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Work Week, where he actually mentions tools that you can use in order to do long-term world travel. It was not the goal of the book. It was more like how can you automate and how can you think of uncommon ways of imagining your life, the idea of lifestyle design. And also he talks about another book that was very inspirational for him, and it is inspirational for me, that is called Vagabonding by Rolf Potts. In these two books, you will find the tools necessary for you to do something like this. And I'm talking about the tools both from a, let's say, practical point of view of how do you deal with work, how do you deal with, how do you negotiate remote work agreement if you want to keep your job, what to do when you go to a place, what kind of traps to avoid, and all those things. The first thing to consider in both the 4-Hour Work Week and Vagabonding is this idea that you're going to a place that you're not just trying to go there for a couple days, and that actually opens up the place, because you will interact with local people in a different way. Ideally, you would actually be a part of that community somehow in a way that is not just a regular touristic route. Because the regular touristic routes, they're made for people that have between 1, 2, 3, at most a couple weeks. And there's a whole industry all over the world that developed over the last 2 centuries to accommodate for that. And they will give, let's say, more canned experiences, which I'm not poo-pooing. I think they are amazing. Usually when you see people talking about long-term world travel, they sort of like, you have these tourists that do this and that. And I'm like, it's an amazing thing that you can be in South America and for about $2,000 or maybe $3,000, you can go anywhere around the world in at most 48 hours. Aside from maybe some really remote places, but for, let's say, a third or a half of what a modern middle-class person have in terms of money, kings from a century ago could not do. That's why I gave you the deep time. This is a very, very recent thing. It's a couple hours ago if you consider history of humanity. And I think that's glorious. That's amazing because it opens up the opportunities that you can have glimpses and actual interactions with people all over the world. So I'll never say bad things about the idea of traveling even if you have a weekend. It's a glorious thing. It's an amazing thing. At the same time, I am here to tell you that there are very cool ways of traveling if you're able to spend a significant amount of time in a place, and if you're able to go from place to place according to your own schedule. It is something that is possible, is available. I do it. I've been doing it for 4 years, and there are people that have been doing this for way longer, and I think it's something that is worth considering. It's worth considering trying. The first thing to consider is why do it, right? So for each person it will be a different thing. One of the reasons to do it is because it will change your perspective in the world. It will change the way that you approach work. It will change the way that you approach people. Like, I am very happy that I have friends in almost every country at this point, and I hope to have even more. I was able to collaborate with local artists in many countries, from Cambodia to Egypt, to Turkey, to Brazil, and to Canada, well, to many countries where I actually spent some actual significant amount of time. And you sort of like feel like you're part of the community on that place. And that is a remarkable thing. And by that, what I mean is, you're not taking advantage of the people in the place. You're actually bringing business to them. And ideally, you will actually be participating in the community. And that will be something that is great for them. Because, as I think as Basquiat said, that if products don't cross borders, soldiers will. And I think, as a pacifist, that's one of the ideas that I think is very important and I strongly believe in, and especially in terms of culture. The culture is something that should interconnect. And we as world travelers, especially if we are, as in the arts, but actually anyone, when you travel to another place, you bring a little bit of your culture, and they live a little bit of that culture in you, and that blend, this mix of watercolors that becomes fused, where you still have a little bit of the original color of each, but there is something new that is created by this mix. And that, to me, it's the most beautiful thing that exists. And subject for another episode, but I want to mention just this guy named Amir Ali, director of the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto. I have to give him the credit for the idea, because he's the one that told me that the only thing pure is the mixture. And I love that idea. There's so much more that I wanted to say in that episode, and I actually ended up recording, but I ended this account of the Siwa trip by saying the words that have meant so much to me, that the only thing pure is the mixture, is the connection between cultures. And I hope that inspires you to find your path interconnected in the world. I thought this was going to be about long-term world travel. And today I ended up revisiting the first photo of the Earth seen from space. It's called the Blue Marble, taken by Apollo 17, I think, on 1972. It was the first time that our wandering mother had her picture taken. And it's a reminder for us that, along with the about 100 billion people that came before us, we are all wanderers, we're all travelers, and the Earth seems to be our spaceship. So even if we are stuck with a boat that doesn't let us go anywhere, revisiting this adventure reminded me that we can always sail again. Maybe the message of long-term world travel has nothing to do with travel, after all. It's to always be where you are supposed to be. And that's my wish to you. My name is Pedro Bonato. This has been Wanderings, and I'll see you on the next one. Let's sail.